Hello guys, welcome back po dito sa ating channel sa Maestro Electrico. And this is our second tutorial video for electrical wiring installation or basic wiring installation. So with this we have two bulbs controlled by one single pole switch. So we have here two bulbs here with one single pole switch, of course, to our electrical protective equipment or device. So this is what we call a circuit breaker. So within our diagram here, we have the circuit breaker symbol. We have the bulb A and the bulb B. Then we have here the junction box for this one, junction box. And then we have a one single pole switch. This is the symbol for a one down single pole switch here, this one. Okay? So as we discussed with our previous tutorial video, of course, in a one bulb controlled by one single pole switch at the time, only one bulb in the circuit. So we discussed, of course, the very important parts of the wiring connections. This is actually the foundation as to how are we going to connect the electrical wiring connections. So we have here the so-called 3 cycles of current to flow. Ang dami pong natuturo ng electrical subject, pero minsan po nalilimutan po. They were able to forget to discuss the principles of current to flow in the circuit. So we have here the 3 cycles of current to flow in the circuit. So we have here the first cycle. To execute the first cycle, of course, we only need at least one of the terminal coming from the source line. Again, we have 3 major parts of the circuit. So we have the source, the load, the control device, and of course, the conductor or the wire. So more or less, it is around 4 major parts of circuit. Okay, so in this cycle, we will discuss that one, around 3 cycles only within our 4 parts of the circuit. Okay. To execute our first cycle, we have one of the terminal coming from the source line is connected to one of the terminals also coming from the load of the circuit to perform the first cycle. Again, for us to have a better understanding about the parts of the circuit, so we have here the parts, right? So first part, of course, the source line. In the source line, we have the line 1 and the line 2. That is the source line. Plus the electrical protective device, which is the circuit breaker. So this one now will serve as our source line. This is going to be inserted in our convenience outlet in order to energize our circuit here. So this will serve as our line 1 and line 2. The same also within our diagram here. We have the line 1 and the line 2. This is already our main plug. Okay? Then we have here the circuit breaker, the overprotective devices, then overcurrent protective devices, Then we have here the load of the circuit. These are the load. This is again the source, the load, the control devices, and of course the conductors or the wire in order to connect each other part for us to have complete circuit. Okay, so again, the first cycle states that the one of the terminal coming from the source is connected to one of the terminals coming from the load of the circuit. It becomes our first cycle. So first cycle actually happens here around this part. Okay? So again, we have one of the terminal coming from the source and one of the terminal coming from the load of the circuit is connected together. That is our first cycle. Now, when we connect, of course, one of the terminal coming from the source, this one, line 1 will serve as our neutral line. We always have to indicate that line 1, or remember that line 1 will automatically serve as our first or neutral line. Okay, so this is our first wire coming from the source line. Line 1 is connected to, according to the cycle, connected to one of the terminal also coming from the load. Okay, so we will connect this one. Okay, now the question is, how many loads do we have in our circuit? So the answer is, of course, 2 loads in the circuit. So we have bulb A and the bulb B. When we talk about loads, of course, this will serve as the current consuming devices. Ito po yung mga devices na kumukonsumo ng kuryente sa ating circuit. So, source, of course, yung linya mula doon sa utility or else mula doon sa generator or even galing po sa solar na circuit natin, yun yung tinatawag natin source line. Okay? So, the first cycle will happens on one of the terminal coming from the source line is connected to one of the terminal coming from the load of the circuit. Now, again, way back on our question, how many loads do we have here? We have 2 loads in the circuit. We have the bulb A and the bulb B. So, meaning to say, first cycle would be takes all the loads in the circuit. Pag dalawang load dyan, meaning to say, ang isang wire dito guys, automatic nakakonect dun sa ating tinatawag natin first cycle. So since dalawa ang load natin, meaning to say, dalawa ring wire coming from the loads are connected together with our first line of our source to execute our first cycle. Okay? So meaning to say, itong wire na to mula sa load natin, diretso yan, ayan, nakakonect dyan sila lahat. So meaning to say, we have 3 wires connected together there on the first cycle. Okay? So, next nating cycle is on the second cycle, around this point. In the second cycle again, the second terminal of the load are connected to one of the terminal coming from the control device. Again, ulitin ko lang po, pakilinaw ko lang. Ang sabi that one of the terminal or the second terminal coming from the load, this is the load side here, load side dito. Dito yung load natin guys. Dito yung load natin. Okay? Dito yung source natin guys. At dito yung control device natin guys. Yan, CD. Control device, this is our load and this is our source. Yan, kuha na guys. So around this part, dito yung ating control device or switch. Dito yung ating load, doon yung ating source. So meaning to say, in the second cycle, the second terminal coming from the load, dito, is connected to one of the terminal coming from the control device or the switch. So therefore, from the load itself is connected to one of the terminal coming from the control device. So, ang mangyari guys, ganito guys. Okay? Yan. Dito lang. Yan po. So, naka-jumper lang siya. Itong symbol na to, you need to say, these wires across each other without connections. Alright? So next, tapos na ba yung ating second cycle? So yung second cycle natin guys is actually nangyayari po dito sa point na to. Dito po sa point na to. Okay? So we consider this one as our second cycle around this part. Itong connections nito. Right? Again, ang tanong again, the question is, how many loads do we have since the second cycle states that one or second of the terminal coming from the load is connected to one of the terminal coming from the switch or the control device. So therefore, the second cycle is not yet completed. Why? Because this one, in our second cycle, we need also to connect the second terminal of our second load or the second bulb in our circuit. So therefore, ang wire na ito po guys, dapat nakakonect din po dito mismo sa connection sa second terminal ng ating mga loads are joined together to execute with our first cycle. We have to connect it from the control device na wire. Okay? So therefore, dito. Yan. So dapat may connection siya dito guys. Ayan. So, ibali 1, 2, 3 wires are connected together. One coming from the switch or the control device. Two wires also coming from the loads of the circuit, then connected together to execute our second cycle. Now, for the second cycle, of course, here, this is our control device, meaning the second terminal coming from our control device, this wire, is connected to one of the terminal coming from the source line, which is line 2 already, to execute our third cycle. So, this is it guys. Alright? So, lagyan lang natin ng dot, an indication that there is a connection around that part. Okay? So, done na tayo. This is our third cycle around that part. So, kompleto na. So, as we go along to trace the flow of the current in the circuit, there is only a cycle from the source line, going to the load side, going to the control device, then go back to the source line. Try natin pag-trace. Okay? Ayan. Flow ng current, papalo dito kasi naka-switch on yung ating breaker, halimbawa. Then, ayan. Okay yung bulb natin, so, bababa yan dito guys. Ayan, bababa rin dito. Katulad rin ng isang wire dito. Of course, may flow ng current po dito. Ayan. Okay yung bulb natin. Lalabas yan dito. Okay. Then, tampo sila dito guys. So, meaning to say, na-trace natin yung flow of current sa dalawang bulb or dalawang load natin. And of course, pumalo yung kuryente dito, flow of current, kasi naka-switch on natin switch. Then, paakyat pabalik doon sa ating line 2 to complete the cycle. Okay? So, next natin gagawin is, we will apply these connections po dito sa ating devices na po. So, kunwari po, tapos na po tayo mag-layout sa lahat ng ating wiring devices po. Kagaya po ng ating circuit breaker, itong receptacle, itong bombilya natin, itong bulbs natin dyan, itong pipings, itong junction box, at saka itong ating switch dito po. So, kunwari tapos na po lahat, and then, nakapagtanggal na po tayo ng ating insulator para po sa ating wiring connections dito. So, ito po nangyari Mula po sa ating source line, gumagamit po ako ng extension wire dito guys. Then, together po itong ating main plug. This will now serve as our source line here for the line 1 and the line 2. So, pakitandaan na lang po that line 1 always serve as our neutral line at ating line 2 ay dapat para sa ating live wire. Okay? So, guys, ang gagamitin kong line 1, of course, ditong banda na ito, itong line 1 na to. Then, the second part here is our line 2. Now, so, paano yan ma-identify kung saan ba talaga yung line 1 at saka line 2? So with that, of course, we will use the multitester. So, itong multitester, gagamitin natin guys. Set lang natin sa resistance testing. Tapos, continuity testing. Itong klaseng multitester ko po, mayroon po itong sounder po. Meaning to say, there is a continuity between the two lines being tested. Kasi continuity testing lang to guys. Okay? So once tutunog tong tester natin, meaning to say, mayroon po siyang continuity mula doon sa ating tinitest na wire. So that is actually the process of testing for our to our wires. Okay? So, kunwari, sasabit ko lang dito guys, and then, titest natin kung saang wire ang line 1 at saka line 2. So, paano ba i-test? Paano ba natin i-test? Or paano ba natin hanapin ang wire mula sa line 1 ng source at saka line 2 ng ating source? So, kunwari ito ang ating line source ngayon, ginagamitan po natin ng main plug at saka dumadaan po dito sa ating circuit breaker. So, ang gagawin natin, of course, switch on muna natin. We will switch it on, upright position, of course, pataas, and then we will test this one, the main plug. So, ang line 1 po actually is ito po siya. Usually po, ino-open natin yan dito. So, matitingnan natin kung itong ating line 1 at itong ating line 2. So, kunwari, na-test ko na dyan, doon sa itaas kasi guys, naka-indicate na rin dito eh. Ito yung line 1 at isa itong line 2 dito guys. So, indicator ko na po, nandito na yung line 1 at ito po aking line 2. So, pag-test na lang po, ganito po guys. So, may indicator na kasi dito eh. Ito yung aking line 1 yung ginagamit eh. Ito po. Yan. Okay? So, ito pong line 1 dito. Yan. Yun si line 1 actually. So, we have to open first, then identify where is the line 1. Ito yung nag-sounds, meaning to say, yung indicator natin is ito yung ating line 1. Pangalawa po dito ng ating line 2. Transfer lang dito sa pag-test, then yan. Meaning to say, line 1, line 2. Line 1 dapat tutunog yan. 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 Tapos line 2, kabila. Ayan. So, we have here the indicator for line 1. Then, dito po yung line 2. So, we will close first our circuit breaker. So, ito yung line 1 again. At saka ito yung line 2. So, to identify kung saan ba talaga ang wire ng ating line 1 at saka line 2, gagamitin natin yung indicator natin mula sa line 1 at saka line 2. Yung itinest po natin yung ating circuit breaker, nandito yung line 1 at saka nandito yung line 2 based in this indicator here. So, again, we will test the first line para sa line 1. Hahanapin natin kung saan ba talaga sa dalawang wire na to ang ating line 1. Once natutunog yung ating tester, iilaw dito, meaning to say, for the continuity, yun yung ating first line or line 1. Okay. Ito guys. Hindi umiilaw, hindi tumutunog, meaning to say, hindi po itong ating line 1. Next, yan. Tumutunog, umiilaw, meaning to say, this is our line 1. So, itong wire na to is line 1. Since line 1 siya, hindi natin siya lalagyan ng indicator. Or parang palatandaan na yan wire na yan is line 1. Kundi yung ating line 2. So line 2 dapat yung tester natin, ng isang test prod natin ay dito sa kabila. So this is line 1 actually kanina. Then sa testing natin. Then itong second wire natin dito is our line 2. So line 2, of course, line 1 yan, hindi papapalo yan, tester natin. Walang ilaw, walang tunog, walang palo sa kanyang pointer sa scale. Wala yan. So ito, of course, ito yung ating line 2. Umiilaw, pumapalo yung ating pointer doon sa ating scale. Meaning to say, ito yung line 2. Line 2 itong wire na to. Sa line 2, of course, pwede tayong actually mag-tagging. Gagamit tayo ng tagging or even lagyan lang natin ng palatandaan siya. Yan. Yun yung mga technique ng mga electrician eh. Meaning to say, this is live wire coming from our source line, which is line 2, and this is automatically our our uh, line 1 will serve as our neutral line. So, ang mangyari guys, yung neutral line, dapat natin maintindihan at saka mahanap natin kung saan ba yung ating neutral line. So, dito of course, kasi neutral itong wire na to, ito yung ating line 1, this will take automatically as our line 1 as a neutral line, meaning to say, dapat itong wire na to, sa first cycle, dapat makakonect from line 1 doon sa ating first cycle na line 1 is connected to one of the terminal coming from the source. Since dalawa ito, so meaning to say, we will find it first, our neutral connections coming from these two loads here. So, paano ba natin talaga mahanap itong neutral line connections dito sa ating load? Since dalawa rin ang wire. So, ang gagawin natin guys, dito lang guys. Okay? Tutukang maigi dyan, sa loob mismo ng ating receptacle or lamp holder. Meron dyan dalawang parts. We have here the center conductor and we have the neutral line connections here. So this is automatically itong outer part ng ating screw shell dito. Yun yung ating, yung parang aluminum, yun yung ating neutral connections. At yung nasa center conductor po niya, yung parang bronze po ang kulay, parang copper wire, yung color copper po siya. Automatic yun pong ating load side ng ating connections patungo po doon sa ating control device. So meaning to say, pag test dyan guys, sa dalawang wire, hahanapin lang natin first yung neutral line connection. So ito po guys yung neutral. So itong isang wire dapat pipili kung saan may indikasyon na may continuity silang dalawa. Ito. So meaning to say, itong tumutunog na to, ito yung ating neutral line. Isa rin itong paraan sa pag-troubleshoot. Kung mayroon bang loose connections sa loob ng ating junction box doon sa connections ng ating receptacle patungo doon sa ating wire. So double check din natin kung tutunog yung second line natin. Yan. So meaning to say, walang problema dito sa ating receptacle. May continuity, meaning to say, gumagana siya. Alright? So, nangyari again, ito po ang ating neutral. Ito si neutral, automatic. Yun yung ating isasama doon sa ating neutral mula doon sa ating source line. Okay. So, itong si live, pwede natin itago muna natin sa likod. Okay? Para hindi tayo mawala kung saan yung neutral at saan yung ating live wire. So, next is, itetest rin natin itong dalawang wire again, mula again dito sa ating isa pang load or bulb. So, hahanapin natin ulit itong si neutral line. So, the way we test, of course, this way. Since nandito sa labas yung side ng ating bumbilya, itong si neutral, so, ganun na lang gagawin. Didikit lang nyo dito, guys. Sa gilid lang mismo ng metal screw. Yan. Tapos, hahanap tayo. Since tumutunog, umiilaw, yan, meaning to say, itong wire na hinahawakan ko ngayon, ito yung ating neutral line. So, automatic itong isa is our live wire connections mula doon sa ating switch line. So, gagawin ko, hindi ko na bibitawan to, saka pupulutin ko na lang yung isa pang neutral line coming from the load, then isa pang neutral line coming from the source line to execute our first cycle. Again, ulitin ko sa first cycle ng theory natin, one of the terminal coming from the source, of course, itong source line natin, naka-male plug na tayo, of course, is connected to one of the terminal coming from the loads of the circuit, connected together to execute our first cycle. Okay? So, ito guys, sinahawakan ko na siya, and then, we will hold that one with another piece of the plier, this one, here, like that, and then, twist here with the use of the other piece of the plier. So, meaning to say, there should be a pair of pliers, a set of pliers, to execute the splicing process. Ayan. Twist lang. Usually, clockwise formation palabas yung formation ng pag-twist natin. Okay? It's either left-handed or right-handed ka. Dapat yung twist natin is from left to right. Meaning to say, out yung pag-twist natin. Okay? Palabas po lahat. Okay? So, yan. Then, pwede ka na dyan maglagay ng electrical tape. Okay? Para sure na secure yung wiring connections mo. Ayan. Ayan siya. Ilipit lang dyan. Then, ganun po. Okay. Next. So, meron tayo dito natira. For the second cycle, follow lang natin yung ating cycles of current to flow. Okay? Yung cycle natin, ipapalo natin. The second cycle, we have one of the terminal coming from the load of the circuit. No? Ito yung ating load kasi, yung bumbilya na mismo. Ayan. So, one of the terminal, or the second terminal coming from the load of the circuit is connected to one of the terminal coming from the control device. Itong control device po guys, no need for us to identify first kung saan yung neutral at saka yung ating live wire. Kasi, automatic po yan, ang switch line dapat na wires ay intended po sa hot line or live wire. Para makat niya at walang papasok na live dito sa ating load side ng ating circuit. So, meaning to say, the second terminal coming from the load is connected to one of the terminal coming from our control device. Ito guys, isa lang guys. Iwan mo lang yung isa. So, ang tanong again, the question is, how many loads do we have in the circuit? We have two loads of the circuit. So, meaning to say, itong isang wire na ito mula sa second bulb natin or bulb B natin, of course, yan. Sasama lang yung tatlo agad. So, 3 wires again to be connected together for our second cycle. Isa dito, at isa mula sa ating switch line na wire. Okay? So, kapit lang ng isa pang plier. Ayan. And then, twist lang natin siya guys. Dapat, yung insulator dapat pantay. Yung height niya dyan. Okay, ganyan. Then, twist lang. So, I've said counterclockwise or palabas yung ating pag-twist ng wire. Dyan. Ganun lang yan guys. Tapos, tanggalin natin yung bandang huli kasi nabubutas yung ating electrical tape. So, delikado yan. Dapat malinis yung patwist natin. And then, this one. Yan. Stretch mo lang. Yan. Tapos, dito guys. Loop. And then, yan. Yun yung tamang proseso ng ating installation process, guys. Ayan. Then, yung natira natin, of course, itong mga indikasyon natin na electrical tape, meaning to say, this is our live wire coming from our source line. So, in this case, may natira pa tayong isa pang wire mula sa ating control device, meaning to say, tap na lang natin to execute our third cycle. So, again, yung third cycle natin sa current flow or cycles of current flow is that one or the second terminal coming from the switch or the control device is connected to the second terminal coming from the source line in order to complete the circuit. So, itong dalawang itong natitirang wire sa ating third cycle, dapat i-connect na lang natin diretso guys to execute our third cycle. Ayan guys. Okay? So, ito po guys. Connect na lang natin ito. Then, remove natin yung last part niya kasi matulis ko nabubutas yung ating electrical tape. So, delikado. Dapat hindi mabubutasan yung electrical tape natin dahil lang sa mga impurities ng ating mga wires na connect. So, dapat malinis yan at saka lagyan natin ng electrical tape. And then, stretch again. Ganyan. Hilain lang maigi. Huwag yung masyadong hila guys kasi mapuputol yung ating electrical tape. Yan. Yan lang yun. Okay? So, tapos na sa splicing natin. Of course, lilinisin natin. I-terminate natin maigi sa loob ng ating electrical box. Yan. So, kung ganito mangyari guys, look mo lang ng ganyan. Lagay mo sa loob. Then, the other one here, lagay mo rin doon sa loob. So, hanggat maaari, hindi magkadikit-dikit yung mga electrical tape sa loob para hindi po sila mag-spark kung sakaling may sira po yung ating may ating splicing po. Ayan. Okay? So, ganyan po guys. Segregate lang. Ayan. So, of course, lalagyan natin ng cover. Ayan. Yan si cover. Tapos, lagyan natin ng screw. Okay? So, yung first video natin, pinakita ko na po paano ikabit yung wires dito sa ating receptacle. Paano ikabit yung wires dito po sa ating circuit breaker. At paano po ikabit yung wires dito sa ating control device. Ipinakita ko na po doon. So, ngayon, hindi ko na po papakita pa sa inyo. So, review na lang po kayo guys doon sa aking unang video tungkol sa one bulb controlled by one single pole switch. At ito naman ating two bulbs controlled by one single pole switch muna. Okay? Ayan. Secure natin para malinis yung output natin guys. Ayan. Alright. Ayan po. So, ngayon, dapat naka-off to. Naka-off din natin circuit breaker guys. Okay? Then, we will try to energize our circuit. Ayan. Ito siya. This will serve as our source line. Off muna yung breaker. Off muna ang ating control device. Dapat, pagsaksak natin doon sa outlet, hindi pa dapat gagana kasi naka-off yung ating control device and then itong ating circuit breaker din po. So, ayan. Nakasaksak na yan guys ngayon. So, ang gagawin na lang po natin dito ngayon guys ay switch on na lang po natin itong ating control device or itong ating switch or the single pole switch po. Kasi nakaswitch on na po na ating circuit breaker. So, ganun po. So, dalawang ilaw, magkasabay po sila kasi two bulbs controlled by one single pole switch only. So, off, on, off, and on. On position ng switch dapat always right side. Pag off naman, left side. Ayan. Switch on position ng ating breaker, upside. Okay? Downward naman yung position ng ating off. So, halimbawa, naka-switch on siya, may emergency, pwede natin papatayin dito gamit ang ating circuit breaker. Off. Switch on naman sa taas. Ayan. Off naman dito sa ating switch. On. Off. On. On dito guys. Okay? So, thank you so much for watching our video, tutorial video po dito sa Maestro Electrical. And if you are new with our channel, so please do subscribe, like, and click the bell button to become updated with our videos. Thank you so much.